Yechiel Leiter is the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., and he joins me now. Ambassador, thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Jim. Good to be with you.
First, if I could begin, it's been a week since just the shocking murder of those two young Israeli embassy staffers here in Washington. I wonder, just quite simply, how are embassy staff and how are the families of the victims recovering?
Well, thank you, Jim. We're all in mourning, obviously. 150 members of the Israeli embassy in Washington. We're very close to both Sarah and Yaron. We worked on the same floor together. We saw them every day. These were beautiful young kids about to be engaged. I flew out on Sunday to be with Sarah's family out in Kansas City. This was not a Dorothy trip and Wizard of Oz kind of experience. It was a very harsh experience, very difficult. But I was there to embrace Bob and Nancy. I know what it means to lose a child. I lost my son in the war in Gaza. So I was able to convey heart-to-heart consolation to the parents of Sarah, and yesterday in a phone call to Yaron, whose parents live just outside of Jerusalem.
Well, please pass on CNN's thoughts to their families in particular, and I was aware that you'd lost your son in combat.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jim.
My thoughts go to you as well. If we can, a number of events in the news I do want to get through. Let's begin with the ongoing military offensive by Israel in Gaza. As I said just before, Israeli officials are saying the intent is to occupy 75%. Can you clarify, is the intent of Israel to permanently reoccupy Gaza? And if not permanently, how long?
The intent of Israel is, as the government decided on October 8th, the day after the massacre, to destroy Hamas, to free our hostages, and to ensure that Gaza will never again be a Hamastan, be an area from which malicious and malevolent forces could attack our civilians. And we're going to persist until those three objectives are complete. We hope right now that we're in the midst of another hostage negotiation through the good services of President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. He's achieved a number of ceasefires and hostage releases until now. We're hopeful that he'll achieve one now as well. We still have 20 live hostages in the hands of Hamas in their dungeons underground. So we're focused on that, and we're focused on ensuring the safety of our people.
I've spoken to the relatives of hostages still held in Gaza, and they have questioned the Israeli Prime Minister's priorities with the war there, that he has not placed the safety, the return of the hostages high enough. And as you're aware, the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert wrote this week in Haaretz newspaper the following: I believe the government of Israel is now the enemy from within. It has declared war on the state and its inhabitants. No external foe we fought against over the past 77 years has caused greater damage to Israel than what the Itamar Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu, and Bezalel Smotrich-led government has inflicted on us. I wonder what your response is to that kind of criticism from inside Israel itself.
Well, you've got criticism within the United States on an administration from one side or the other. One opposition criticizes the present administration and the previous administration, and I wouldn't put too much stock into a small and relatively irrelevant commentary in the newspaper. The fact of the matter is that our government is democratically chosen. We have a democratically elected prime minister who's actually been elected over the past 15 years, I'd say 5 or 6 times. So it's representative of the people. Let me just say this regarding the hostage families. I understand them. I understand to the very base of my heart. I understand them. But they are focused on one aspect of this war, and that's getting their hostages out. There are other aspects to the war that we also have to take into account, and that's ensuring that the state of Israel doesn't become hostage to another Hamastan at our border. We were hostage on October 7th, and we had 1,200 of our people slaughtered. That's not a situation we're going to go back to. We're not going to allow jihadis to reconstitute themselves on our borders anywhere, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's in the Golan Heights or whether it's in Judea, Samaria. We're not going to allow jihadis to sit on our border armed to the teeth and then threaten to murder us once again. Even Hamas, at this point, continues to say that if we do not defeat them and they reconstitute themselves, they'll repeat October 7th. We can't allow that to happen. And we're not going to.
The thing is, though, that Omer is not just a small minority in Israel. A recent poll aired on Saturday by Channel 12 in Israel showed that 55% of the Israeli public believes that Netanyahu's main goal is to remain in power. They question not the whether to prioritize safety or, for instance, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but they question whether Netanyahu is in this to protect himself more or the state of Israel. That's my question there. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, criticism is simply wrong. I think there are people in the opposition who, and it's legitimate, by the way. I mean, we're a very robust democracy. We have people representing all sides of the issue, and it's perfectly legitimate for the opposition to oppose the government. But the fact of the matter is, again and again, if you're talking about surveys and polls, 70% of the population is insistent that the war be prosecuted to the end and Hamas be destroyed. So I wouldn't, jump to conclusions from a particular poll in a particular station at a particular time. You have to see it over time. Every time we call up our reserves, for example, they've been called up again and again and again over this past year and a half. All our young people who are leaving their businesses, their law firms, their medical centers, and they're coming to report and fight against this enemy. It's always 100% in the call-up. So we have, former officials making statements. You have that here, you have that around the world. It's not really all that relevant to pay attention to. The people are committed to seeing that October 7th it will never happen again, and that the people responsible for it will be brought to justice, will be removed from the perimeter of Israel. Hamas has to be defeated, and that's what we're about to do.
I want to get on to U.S.-Iran talks because I know Israel is watching them closely. But before I do want to touch on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. As you know, there is a new aid distribution program, which the U.S. is involved in, Israel is involved in, but has received a good amount of criticism from the UN and other aid groups. I want to show a scene of the distribution center as it began in recent days. You had people, hungry people, civilians storming the site there, just trying to feed their families. And some of the scenes were even, well, here you go, what you're seeing now there on the screen. Should people have to fight like that just to feed themselves? Is that an image of a successful aid distribution process?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that what you're screening right now are people fighting. I didn't see people fighting with each other. I see
rushing, desperately jumping the fence.
This is a program. We'll give it a chance. This is a program that just got underway. What I did see for a year and a half, what we all saw, for anybody paying attention, was food being distributed through the good services of Hamas, of a terror organization, who actually hijacked the trucks that were outfitted by money raised here in the United States by NGOs. People gave their 501c3 tax-exempt donations to NGOs to support what they didn't understand wasn't eventually Hamas. Hamas took over these semi-trailers of humanitarian aid. They sold it to the people they wanted to favor and used that money to reconstitute their domination of the Gaza Strip. We cannot allow the people shooting at our soldiers to be supported by NGOs. The UN is the problem. It's not the solution. The UN was in cahoots with representatives of Hamas. Yes, it's hard to stomach, isn't it? But the UN is the problem, not the solution. And what the humanitarian fund, which has been established, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is doing is circumventing what the UN established. Look, you cast doubt, but just last week, a UN representative maliciously, libelously said that in 2 days, in 48 hours, 14,000 babies will starve to death. Everybody heard that. The 48 hours passed. Nobody starved to death, and yet there's no retraction, not from the media and not from the UN. So what we need to do is circumvent the UN, who's creating this problem, who's creating this libelous slander, and we need to make sure that the food gets directly to families in Gaza, and it's working.
Well, I should note that we've spoken on this program to a number of aid agencies, the UN included, but not just the UN, who have said they've seen evidence of malnutrition in enormous numbers in Gaza.
Where is it? Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? That's a libel.
Well,
There's no evidence to that. There is evidence to Hamas taking over the food and selling it to the people that they're interested in. That's where the evidence is.
We spoke to a group called ANERA, who's been on the ground for a great amount of time, and they did tests, right? I'm talking about
participating
urine
with
tests
Hamas.
where they developed, where they saw signs of malnutrition in 40% of the samples. I'm quoting back folks on the ground who've done this kind of testing. But listen, let's set that aside if we can for a moment, because I do want to get to the Iran-U.S. talks. President Trump, as you know, is speaking of progress in nuclear talks with Iran. I wonder, what will Israel do if the U.S. signs a deal with Iran that it finds unacceptable or unsafe for Israel's national security interests?
Well, it's a hypothetical that I don't believe for one moment could actually materialize. We've been speaking very intensely with the Trump administration from the moment President Trump came into office. President Trump has been very clear in the letter that he sent to the leader of Iran. They have a limited amount of time to agree to what he called full dismantlement. There cannot be any road to enrichment, because enrichment means a nuclear bomb. And if these lunatics in Tehran get a nuclear bomb, they're going to use it. For us, this is existential. They call Israel the one-bomb country. Okay, so there's under no circumstance can Iran have a pathway to a nuclear bomb, and we're convinced, absolutely. The American administration is 100% in lockstep with us on that. Now, if that can be achieved through the negotiation process that Steve Witkoff is leading, if anybody can do it, it would be Mr. Witkoff. We certainly hope he's successful in achieving the elimination of this nuclear bomb program through negotiations. If not, obviously, I mean, the president has said it, there's an alternative.
We reported last week that the U.S. assesses that Israel is making military preparations to strike Iranian nuclear facilities, at least preparations for a potential attack. I wonder, do you believe Israel would strike Iran potentially over U.S. objections if, again, it deemed that a deal was not conducive to Israel's safety?
The narrative of, militaristic Israel always preparing for a military operation, it's a narrative that everybody loves, big bad Israel. But wherever we can avoid military confrontation, military operations, we'll do so. We live in the hope right now that the United States will succeed in reaching an agreement with Iran in which their nuclear enrichment program will be dismantled. I do not foresee the possibility of a situation where the U.S. and Israel are going to be in confrontation over what to do with Iran. We're in full agreement. Iran has to be removed from the nuclear stage. They cannot have any pathway to a nuclear bomb. And if they have enrichment, that's the pathway. So there's no enrichment and full dismantlement.
Final question before we go, and I do appreciate your time because you've allowed me to ask you many questions on many topics. Are you hopeful that an agreement will be reached, perhaps in the coming days, between the U.S., Israel, and Hamas that would allow the return at least of some of the remaining living hostages in Gaza?
Well, here's an interesting thing which connects us to one of your previous questions, Jim. The proposal on the table is not very different than what Envoy Witkoff presented about a month ago. The only difference is that Hamas continues to be diminished. Their leader, Mohammed Sinwar, has been eliminated. And now their political base of distribution of these social issues, the humanitarian funding, has been taken away from them. So their power on the street has been completely diminished. And when you take military and political power away from a terrorist organization, they begin to crumble. So if they're going to agree now, it's going to be because we have successfully diminished their military and political power.
Ambassador Yechiel Leiter, again, let me thank you for joining us and for giving us the time.
Thank you, Jim.